Battle Station Cyberg's massive computer that keeps peace throughout the solar system is no longer user-friendly. It's gone wildly out of control. The laser gun it operates has already destroyed Neptune. Earth is its next target. As a high-tech hotshot, you must enter Cyberg's core and activate the system's self-destruct mechanism. Mankind is relying on your know-how and toughness to see this through. But time is running out. Oh yes, one more thing. The powers of your gravity flip suit are essential for a successful outcome to this mission. The suit empowers you to proceed both upside down and right side up as you dash to put this computer permanently on the blink. Being Metal Storm from Tamtex and Irem, released in 1991, to quite a bit of fanfare in 1991. I remember the Nintendo Power issue devoted to this game. Known as Gravity Armor Metal Storm in Japan land, side-scrolling platformer. Pretty basic for side-scrolling platformer, right? Till you get the gravity thing working. Developed by Tamtex and published by Irem, the game was released in North America in 1991, and Japan got it after that, 1992. How about that? Now, before we get too into this, we need to talk about Tamtex for a bit. Tamtex is a much more well-known Japanese company than an American company. They only had two games released in North America. Metal Storm and Ghost Building Company on the Game Boy. Everything else was Japan only. Had some arcade games, some Famicom games, a couple of Game Boy games. Looks like they started in 1986 and were done by 1992. So not a big library from Tamtex. Although the NES does not directly support parallax scrolling, programmers continuously redrew the tiles making up the game's backgrounds in order to animate them scrolling at a different rate than the foreground, giving an illusion of depth. Notably in the game's third and fifth stages, where there is a second background layer that appears to scroll behind the first. How cool is that? Some differences in the game. The Japanese version features an opening cutscene before the title, and with credits in English and the storyline in Japanese. The entire sequence is not present in the American release. This cutscene can only be unlocked in the American version with a Game Genie code and has some garbled graphics at some point. I hate when they did that. They did that with Contra. Stage 6 of the Japanese version is significantly harder as the top and bottom of the screen are electrified. This prevents the player from wrapping around from top to bottom, or vice versa, without taking damage. That's true. There are a couple of stages in this game in which they are infinite vertical scrolling and preset horizontal scrolling. And you actually have to make use of the vertical scrolling to get through the horizontal stages. Kind of maze-like. In the American version, those barriers are not present, allowing the player to pass through the top or bottom of the screen without damage. The Japanese version features extra narration in Japanese during the very last battle at the end of Stage 7 that isn't present in the American version. The Japanese and American versions have differently colored palettes for some of the graphics. The Japanese version is brighter due to whiter backgrounds than the American version. Odd. Usually we like things pretty damn white in America. Japanese version shows the phrase warning before a boss fight, where the American shows red alert. That's a silly change. Japanese version refers to the player's lives as player, whereas the American version refers to them as M308 Gunner, the name of the protagonist. And the text at the end of the game in Japanese is in English, despite the game's opening cutscenes being in Japanese. Weird, huh? We have a related release here. During Metal Storm's Stage 6 boss fight, the battleship from Stage 3 of the first R-Type game can be seen several times in the background. Speaking of R-Type, also developed by Irem, probably Irem's biggest series to date, I would imagine. Great game, them R-Types. Speaking of Irem, just real quick, started off with arcade games back in 1979 with Capsule Invader, and then have gone all the way up. Irem is still making games today. They've released 2 games so far in 2013, one for the PSP and one for the 3DS, and have kind of gone the way of a lot of just downloadable stuff. poor thing. Despite generally being well received by critics and reviewers, Metal Storm has remained somewhat obscure, as it was published by a lesser-known third-party company without much publicity and released late in the life of the family computer. However, issue number 22 of Nintendo Power not only had Metal Storm on its cover, but also featured a 12-page article on the game, including a lengthy strategy guide. This issue's Power Meter review scores the Metal Storm game at 3.8 out of 5 for graphics and sound, 3.7 out of 5 for play control, 3.7 out of 5 for challenge and lasting interest, and 3.7 out of 5 for theme and fun. The game's most notable feature is your ability to switch gravitational pull between top and bottom of the screen at any time, requiring some strategizing for the player to pass through certain areas. You use a password system to continue at later points in the game. And this game, viewers, is hard. 3.7, I would bump that up to at least a 4. You have no health. One hit, you die. One hit from any enemy is death. Hitting spikes is death. While doing some of the gravity flipping, if you happen to hit a gate, which will open and close along with you, that is death. Some of the bosses are pretty large and screen filling, and hitting them or any of their projectiles is death. So it's got a real, shootery kind of feel with as easy as it is to die. And you've got to get really, really used to the gravity controls really quick, because it doesn't play around too much. One funny little thing about the game, you're in this giant metal walker and you shoot itty bitty bullets. There are a couple of power-ups, not very many though. I wish there would have been more, but that's all right. And this should be noted that for some reason, flipping the gravity in your suit does not affect only your suit. It affects certain enemies and, like we mentioned before, different gates. So, that's a little weird, I think, but hey, whatever. The game is very fun. The graphics are great. The music's great. Play control is great. Takes a little getting used to do the gravity swap, which is up and jump or down and jump, but can be done and needs to be done fairly quickly in some instances. It's a fantastic game, and if you've never played it, you really need to.